Rain lashed against the Seattle pavement, masking the scent of the city. Alaric Sterling, a billionaire predator ruling an underground empire, felt his immense power vanish the second a shivering 5-year-old tugged his cashmere coat, holding up a carved wooden wolf. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. Seattle's financial district was unforgiving in November. The rain didn't just fall, it drove itself into the concrete like silver nails, washing away the grime of the city and leaving behind the sharp, metallic tang of ozone. Alaric Sterling stepped out of the glass-fronted lobby of Sterling Holdings on Fifth Avenue, adjusting the collar of his charcoal overcoat. To the human world, he was a ruthless venture capitalist, a man who swallowed failing corporations and stripped them for parts. To the hidden world that operated in the shadows of the Pacific Northwest, he was the Lycan king. He was a man who had not smiled in 5 years. Not since the night the Blackwood Rogues burned his ancestral packhouse in Montana to the ground, taking the only light he had ever known with them. "Car is waiting, Alaric," his head of security. Jason murmured, holding a heavy black umbrella over Alaric's head. Jason was a massive bruiser of a man, his Lycan senses always on high alert, his eyes scanning the crowded sidewalk. "Let's just get back to the estate," Alaric replied, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that vibrated in his chest. "I'm tired of the city stench today." He had just taken one step toward the idling, sleek black Maybach when a tiny, frail body darted out from the shadow of an adjacent newsstand. Jason immediately moved to intercept, his hand instinctively going to the holster beneath his jacket, but Alaric threw up an arm, halting his second in command. It was a child. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. She wore an oversized, violently yellow rain slicker that was heavily stained with street grease and frayed at the cuffs. Her bare legs were blue from the biting cold, and her feet were shoved into rain boots that were at least 3 sizes too big. But it was her eyes that made Alaric freeze. They were a piercing, luminous silver, the exact, unmistakable shade of a pure-blood Lycan. Water dripped from her matted blonde curls as she looked up at him. Entirely unafraid of his towering, 6'4" frame, she reached into the deep pocket of her oversized coat and pulled out a small, dark object, thrusting it up toward him with trembling hands. "Buy my toy, sir," the little girl said, her voice barely a scrape against the roar of the Seattle traffic. "Mom hasn't eaten in 3 days." Alaric looked down at the object in her small, dirt-streaked hands. The breath was violently knocked from his lungs. His heart, a steady, predatory drum, completely stopped. It was a piece of dark oak, meticulously carved into the shape of a timber wolf howling at a crescent moon. It wasn't just a toy. It was the royal crest of the Silver Crest Pack. But more than that, it was the exact carving technique, the deliberate scoring on the wolf's tail. The slight asymmetry of the moon that he knew intimately. There was only one person on the earth who carved wood like that. His mate, Elena, the mate he had watched burn in the ruins of their home half a decade ago. "Where did you get this?" Alaric demanded, his voice cracking. The polished CEO instantly evaporating, leaving only the desperate, grieving Alpha. He dropped to his knees right there on the wet pavement, oblivious to the freezing puddles soaking into his tailored trousers. The little girl flinched, taking a half step back, her silver eyes wide. "Mommy made it. She said to sell it so we could get bread." "Please, sir. Just $1. A scent finally pushed past the overwhelming smell of exhaust and rain. It was incredibly faint, masked by layers of alleyway dirt and stale sweat. But underneath it all was the unmistakable aroma of vanilla and crushed pine needles. Elena. It was impossible. He had buried an unrecognizable body, adorned with her silver locket. He had mourned her. He had slaughtered an entire rogue faction to avenge her. Yet, looking at the girl, looking at the silver eyes that mirrored his own, and the blonde hair that belonged to the ghost that haunted his nightmares, the impossible suddenly became a terrifying, earth-shattering reality. "What is your name, little one?" Alaric asked, his voice softening to a desperate whisper. "Lily," she mumbled, clutching the wooden wolf tighter against her chest. "Lily." Alaric breathed, the name tasting like salvation. He reached into his coat, pulling out his entire money clip, thousands of dollars in crisp hundreds, and pressed it into her tiny, freezing hand. He didn't take the toy. He took her hand instead. "Take me to your mother, Lily, right now." Jason stood frozen behind him, the umbrella dipping as the bodyguard finally caught the scent off the child. "Alpha," Jason breathed, the formal title slipping out in the middle of downtown Seattle. "That's I know, Alaric growled, his eyes never leaving Lily. Lead the way, sweet girl. I'm going to help your mom. Lily didn't take them far, but she led them into a world Alaric usually only viewed from the tinted windows of his penthouse. She hurried down Pike Street, taking a sharp turn into a narrow, unlit alleyway wedged between a defunct seafood restaurant and a towering parking garage. The stench of rotting garbage and stale urine was overwhelming, making Alaric's heightened senses burn. But he ignored it, his eyes fixed on the back of the little girl's yellow raincoat. Back here, Lily whispered, pointing to a dark alcove, shielded from the driving rain by a rusted industrial dumpster. Alaric pushed past the trash, his chest tightening with an agonizing fear. Beneath a makeshift tent of sodden, broken cardboard boxes and a torn blue tarp lay a woman. She was curled into a tight fetal position, shivering violently despite being completely unconscious. "Mommy, I got money. The giant man gave me all his paper," Lily cried, dropping to her knees and shaking the woman's frail shoulder. The woman didn't stir. Alaric dropped beside her, tearing the cardboard away with a swift, violent motion. The dim alley light fell upon her face, and a sound tore from Alaric's throat, a horrific, guttural blend of a sob and a snarl. It was Elena. She was devastatingly thin, her cheekbones sharp and hollow, her lips cracked and bleeding. The radiant, sun-kissed skin he remembered was pale and waxy, covered in bruises and dirt. She was wearing a threadbare gray sweater that was soaked through. But as Alaric stripped off his heavy cashmere coat and wrapped it tightly around her freezing body, his hand brushed the nape of her neck. Sparks hot, electric, and undeniable shot up his arm, settling deep into his chest. The mate bond. It was battered, dormant, and buried under layers of agony, but it was there. She was alive. "Jason, bring the car to the mouth of the alley. Call Dr. Harrison and tell him to prep the secure wing at Bellevue." Alaric roared, scooping Elena's fragile body into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, feeling like a bundle of hollow bones against his chest. "Mommy." Lily began to cry, panic setting in as she saw Alaric pick up her mother. "It's okay, Lily. I'm a doctor," Alaric lied smoothly, his Lycan instincts roaring to protect his pup. He looked at Jason, who was already sprinting toward the street. "Grab my coat. Hold on to my friend Jason. We are taking your mom to a warm bed. I promise you." 20 minutes later, they were through the hidden underground entrance of a private medical facility Alaric owned in Bellevue. The sterile white lights felt blinding after the gloom of the alley. Dr. Harrison, a seasoned Lycan physician with graying temples, already had a team waiting. They whisked Elena away on a gurney, a flurry of IV lines, oxygen masks, and shouted vitals. Alaric paced the waiting room like a caged beast, his hands stained with the dirt from his mate's skin. In the corner, Lily sat on a plush leather sofa, devouring a plate of warm sandwiches and hot chocolate Jason had procured from the cafeteria. She ate with the desperate, frantic speed of a child who genuinely didn't know when her next meal would come. It broke Alaric's heart into a million irreparable pieces. 5 years. She had been out there for 5 years, living on the streets, raising his daughter in the freezing rain while he sat in a penthouse mourning her. Why hadn't she come to him? Why hadn't she reached out? The doors to the triage room pushed open, and Dr. Harrison stepped out, pulling off his surgical mask. His face was grim. "Speak," Alaric commanded, stepping into the doctor's personal space. "She's stabilized, Alpha," Harrison said quietly, keeping his voice low so as not to spook the child. "Severe malnutrition, hypothermia, and a double lung infection. But that's not the worst part." Alaric's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. "Tell me." "Her wolf is completely suppressed, Alaric. Almost dead," Harrison explained, pulling a tablet from his pocket. "I ran her blood work. She's been systematically ingesting low doses of liquid wolfsbane and silver nitrate for years. It's a poison cocktail. It keeps her human, masks her scent, and prevents her from shifting or healing. Whoever did this to her, or if she did it to herself, they wanted to make absolutely sure she could never be tracked by another Lycan." Alaric felt the floor drop out from beneath him. Wolfsbane poisoning was excruciating. The continuous agony she must have endured to keep herself hidden was unimaginable. "She's waking up," Harrison added gently. "The fluids are clearing her system. You can go in." "But Alaric, she's been through severe trauma. Tread lightly." Alaric didn't wait. He pushed past the doctor, stepping into the dim, quiet hospital room. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound. Elena was lying in the center of the bed, an IV dripping fluids into her bruised arm. Her golden hair had been washed and brushed back from her face. As he approached, her eyelashes fluttered, and she slowly opened her eyes. They were the warm, rich hazel he had spent years crying over. "Elena," Alaric choked out, his knees hitting the linoleum floor beside her bed. He reached out, his trembling fingers gently grasping her hand. The mate sparks danced between their skin. "My beautiful Elena, I thought I lost you. I'm so sorry. I'm so damn sorry I didn't find you sooner." Elena stared at him. The monitor beside her bed suddenly spiked, the slow, steady rhythm turning into a rapid, panicked staccato. She ripped her hand away from his grasp as if his touch had burned her, scrambling backward against the pillows, her eyes wide with absolute, primal terror. "Don't touch me," she gasped, her voice hoarse and broken. She looked around the room frantically, pulling the hospital sheets up to her chin. "Where am I? Where is my little girl?" "Lily is safe. She's right outside," Alaric said quickly, holding his hands up in surrender, confusion warring with the joy in his chest. "Elena, it's me. It's Alaric. You're safe now." Elena pressed her back against the headboard, her hazel eyes completely devoid of recognition. She looked at the billionaire Lycan king sobbing on his knees beside her bed, and the words that left her mouth shattered his soul all over again. "I don't know who Elena is," she whispered, trembling violently. "My name is Chloe, and I have absolutely no idea who you are." Silence swallowed the sterile hospital room, thick and suffocating. Alaric remained frozen on his knees, his hands suspended in the empty space where Elena's had just been. Her hazel eyes, once a source of boundless warmth and teasing laughter, were now wide, dilated with absolute, unadulterated terror. She looked at him, not as a husband, not as a mate, but as a monster who had just cornered her. "Chloe," Alaric repeated, the name tasting like ash on his tongue. He forced himself to lower his hands, slowly backing away to give her space. His Lycan instincts roared, demanding he scoop her up, scent her, and claim her, but the man, the husband who loved her more than his own soul, knew that would destroy whatever fragile thread holding her together. Okay, Chloe, I'm stepping back. I won't touch you. You are completely safe here." Dr. Harrison, who had been monitoring the exchange through the observation glass, swiftly entered the room. He moved with a practiced, calm authority, placing himself between Alaric and the trembling woman on the bed. "Mr. Sterling, I need you to step into the hall," Dr. Harrison said firmly, his tone brokering no argument. He turned his attention entirely to Elena, his voice dropping an octave into a soothing, clinical cadence. "Chloe, my name is Dr. Harrison. You are in a private medical clinic in Bellevue. You collapsed from hypothermia and pneumonia. We are just giving you some fluids." Alaric didn't want to leave, but he forced his boots to move, stepping backward through the heavy wooden door. The moment it clicked shut, he slumped against the corridor wall, the impenetrable facade of the billionaire Alpha crumbling entirely. He buried his face in his hands, drawing in a shuddering breath that rattled in his chest. She was alive, but Elena, his Elena, was gone. A small, tentative hand tugged at the fabric of his trousers. Alaric dropped his hands, looking down into Lily's luminous silver eyes. She was holding a brand new stiff teddy bear that Jason must have procured from the hospital gift shop, but her gaze was ancient and deeply worried. "Did you make Mommy cry?" Lily asked, her voice a tiny, sharp reprimand. Alaric slid down the wall until he was sitting on the polished linoleum, bringing himself eye level with his daughter. He swallowed the massive lump in his throat. "No, sweet girl, I didn't mean to. Your mom is just very confused right now. She's been sick for a long time." Lily nodded solemnly, climbing into Alaric's lap without a second of hesitation. It was a profound display of trust that made Alaric's battered heart clench. He wrapped his massive arms around her tiny frame, resting his chin lightly on top of her blonde curls. She smelled like cheap hospital soap, underneath which was the faint, sweet scent of milk and pureblood lichen. "Mommy's medicine makes her forget things," Lily whispered into the quiet corridor, tracing the seam of her teddy bear's ear. Alaric froze. "Her medicine?" "Yeah. The bad man brings it," Lily said, her childish voice incredibly matter-of-fact. a stark contrast to the horrific reality she was describing. We used to live in a dark basement, a really long time ago, before we lived outside. The bad man would come and make Mommy drink the bitter water. He said if she didn't drink it, he would give it to me. And if she ever tried to run away, he would tell the monsters where we were. Rage, pure and blindingly white, ignited in Alaric's veins. Do you remember what this bad man looked like, Lily? Lily scrunched up her nose, thinking hard. He wore suits. Like yours, but older. And he had a big ring on his thumb. It had a wolf on it, just like the toy Mommy carved. The air in Alaric's lungs turned to ice, a heavy silver signet ring worn on the right thumb. It was the traditional mark of a pack elder. Specifically, it was the mark of Gideon Sterling, Alaric's uncle, his most trusted advisor, and the man who had supposedly identified Elena's burned body in the ashes of the Montana estate 5 years ago. Dr. Harrison stepped out of the room, pulling the door quietly shut behind him. He looked at Alaric, then at the child in his lap, his expression grim. "Jason," Alaric barked, not looking up. The massive bodyguard instantly materialized from the end of the hall. "Take Lily to the cafeteria. Buy her every dessert they have." "Yes, Alpha," Jason murmured, gently offering Lily his hand. "Come on, little one. Let's go find some ice cream." Once Lily was out of earshot, Alaric stood, towering over the doctor. "What is wrong with my mate's mind, Harrison? It's a combination of trauma and chemical subjugation," Dr. Harrison explained, crossing his arms over his clipboard. "I ran a specialized toxicology screen based on the wolfsbane levels. It's a specific, highly illegal synthetic strain called Letha's drop. It originated in the European rogue factions. It doesn't just suppress the Lycan gene. It aggressively targets the hippocampus. It induces profound retrograde amnesia. Whoever did this didn't just want to hide her, Alaric. They wanted to erase her identity completely, so she could never find her way back to you." "Gideon?" Alaric growled, the name tearing from his throat like a curse. Dr. Harrison's eyes widened. "Your uncle?" "Alaric, that is treason of the highest order. Why would Gideon fake your mate's death and hold her captive? Because Elena was never meant to be Luna." Alaric realized. The pieces of the 5-year-old puzzle violently slamming together. Gideon hated her. She was a half-blood from a minor pack in Oregon. He wanted me to mate with the alpha of the Crescent Pack to secure the northern territories. When I refused and marked Elena, he must have orchestrated the rogue attack to eliminate her. But why keep her alive? Why the poison? Why the streets? "Because of the child," Alaric said, his voice dropping to a deadly, hollow whisper. "Elena must have been pregnant when the fire happened. Gideon couldn't kill a royal heir. Even his twisted code of elder law strictly forbids shedding royal pup blood, so he kept her chained, suppressing her wolf in her mind until Lily was born. Then, when he realized Lily was a pureblood and a threat to his political machinations, he dumped them on the streets of Seattle, relying on the elements and the poison to do the dirty work he was too cowardly to finish." Alaric turned back to the viewing window. Elena Chloe was curled on her side, staring blankly at the wall, looking terrifyingly fragile. "Begin flushing the Letha's drop from her system immediately," Alaric commanded. "Alaric, withdrawal from that narcotic is brutal. It will trigger massive physical pain, night terrors, and violent memory flashes. It could break her psyche completely," Dr. Harrison warned. "We have no choice. As long as that poison is in her, her wolf is dying, and so is she," Alaric said, his jaw locked in determination. "Prepare a private, secure medical transport. We are moving them to the Medina estate. Lock down the clinic. Purge her admission records. And tell the staff that Jane Doe passed away in the night. If Gideon finds out she's alive and under my protection, he will strike before we are ready." The Sterling estate in Medina was a fortress disguised as a sweeping, modern architectural marvel on the shores of Lake Washington, surrounded by acres of dense, private forest and guarded by elite Lycan enforcers, posing as private security. It was the safest place on Earth for the Lycan King's family. For the first 2 weeks, it felt like a beautifully gilded prison to Elena. She remained confined to the sprawling guest wing, her physical recovery slow and agonizing. As Dr. Harrison systematically reduced the Letha's drop in her IVs, the withdrawals hit her exactly as predicted. Elena spent nights violently convulsing, screaming into her pillows as jagged, nonsensical nightmares tore through her mind. She dreamed of fire, of burning timber, of a man with cold eyes and a heavy silver ring, and of a towering shadow with silver eyes that felt simultaneously terrifying and profoundly safe. Through every scream, through every panic attack, Alaric was there. He didn't push. He didn't demand recognition. He simply sat in the corner of her dimly lit room, a silent, immovable mountain of support when she woke up thrashing, crying out for her daughter. Alaric was the one who gently carried a sleeping Lily into the room, placing the child on the mattress so Elena could feel her warmth. Whenever the chills overtook her, he would quietly drape heated blankets over her shivering form, never lingering, never crossing the boundaries she had silently drawn. It confused Elena deeply. This terrifyingly powerful billionaire, a man who commanded the room just by breathing, treated her like she was spun glass. On the 15th day, the turning point arrived. The rain had finally broken, leaving behind a crisp, painfully bright Seattle afternoon. Elena, wrapped in a thick wool cardigan, ventured out of her room for the first time, following the sound of giggles. She found them in the massive, glass-walled conservatory overlooking the lake. Alaric was sitting cross-legged on the expensive Persian rug, completely ignoring his tailored suit as Lily meticulously placed an array of plastic tiaras on his dark, styled hair. "You have to wear the pink one, Mr. Alaric." "It's the royalist," Lily demanded, her tiny face utterly serious. "I bow to your superior fashion sense, princess," Alaric replied, his deep, gravelly voice laced with an affection so profound it made Elena's breath hitch. He dutifully adjusted the bright pink plastic crown on his head. Elena leaned against the doorframe, a strange, phantom ache blooming in her chest. She watched his large, scarred hands delicately pour invisible tea into a miniature plastic cup. "I know him," a voice whispered from the deep, locked vault of her mind. "He loves chamomile. He reads the Financial Times backwards. He hates the smell of lavender." The unprompted facts terrified her, but the overwhelming sense of safety anchored her. Alaric looked up, his silver eyes locking onto hers. He didn't scramble up or make a sudden movement. He simply offered a soft, guarded smile. "Good afternoon, Chloe. How are you feeling today?" "Better," she rasped, clutching the edges of her cardigan. She took a hesitant step into the room. "You are very good with her. She's easy to be good to," Alaric said softly. He gestured to the plush armchair near the sunlight. "Would you care to join the royal banquet? We are currently serving imaginary Earl Grey and plastic scones." Elena hesitated, then slowly walked over, sinking into the armchair. For the first time, she allowed herself to really look at him. The sharp cut of his jaw, the faint silver scar cutting through his left eyebrow, the overwhelming breadth of his shoulders. As she stared, a sharp, searing pain suddenly spiked behind her eyes. A flash of memory. Those same shoulders bare, gleaming with sweat, pinning her to a mattress, while a deep laugh echoed in her ear. "You're mine, Elena. Forever. 117 day. Wincy dal his mine day." Elena gasped, pressing the heels of her hands into her eyes as the room spun. "Chloe?" Alaric was instantly on his feet, the tiara forgotten, closing the distance between them but stopping just short of touching her. "Harrison! Get Dr. Harrison." No, I'm fine," Elena panted, blinking rapidly to clear the dizzying black spots from her vision. She looked up at Alaric, her chest heaving. You called me Elena once." "At the hospital." Alaric froze, his expression tightening. "Yes. Why?" Before Alaric could answer, the heavy oak doors of the conservatory swung open. Jason stepped in, his massive frame tense, his eyes completely black, his wolf pushed dangerously close to the surface. "Alpha, we have a situation." Jason ground out, ignoring Elena's presence entirely. "Gideon is here. He bypassed the lower gate security by claiming elder privilege. He's in the main foyer demanding to see you. He says he heard rumors you've been harboring a rogue." Alaric's blood ran ice cold. He looked at Elena, then at Lily, who was oblivious, still pouring fake tea. "Take them to the panic room. Now?" Alaric ordered Jason, his voice dropping into the terrifying, absolute command of the Lycan king. "Lock the blast doors. If Gideon or any of his personal guard try to bypass you, Kill them. Elena stood up, panic instantly flooding her system. What's happening? Who is Gideon? But it was too late. Heavy, measured footsteps echoed down the marble hallway outside the conservatory. A voice, smooth as aged bourbon and twice as toxic, floated into the room. Now, Alaric, is that any way to treat family? An older man stepped into the doorway. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit, leaning slightly on a silver-tipped cane. His silver hair was slicked back, and on his right thumb sat a heavy, unmistakable silver signet ring engraved with a howling wolf. Elena stopped breathing. The air in the room completely vanished. The phantom smell of smoke, of burning flesh, and the bitter, acidic taste of Lethe's drop violently assaulted her senses. The dam in her mind didn't just break, it exploded. She remembered the fire. She remembered the heat blistering her skin. She remembered crawling through the smoke, heavily pregnant, only to be dragged out by the hair by the man standing in the doorway. She remembered the cold basement, the relentless beatings, the agonizing poison forced down her throat while she begged for her unborn child's life. You, Elena whispered, her voice trembling violently as she backed away, knocking the plastic tea set to the floor with a clatter. Gideon's arrogant smile faltered the second his eyes landed on her. His face drained of all color, genuine shock overriding his aristocratic composure. It cannot be. You are dead. Elena's hazel eyes flashed, and for the first time in 5 years, the brilliant, luminous gold of her inner wolf bled into her irises. She didn't look at Gideon. She looked at Alaric, the absolute certainty of her identity crashing back into her soul. Alaric, Elena sobbed. No longer the broken Chloe, but the Luna of the Silver Crest pack. He tried to kill our baby. Hell erupted in the glass-walled conservatory. The immaculate facade of Alaric Sterling, the composed billionaire, completely shattered. In his place stood the Lycan king, a creature of primal, unadulterated fury. The air pressure in the room plummeted so drastically that the glass panes groaned. Spiderweb fractures appearing at the corners of the massive windows. A low, terrifying snarl tore from Alaric's throat, vibrating with such force that it rattled the teacups on the floor. You. Alaric's voice was no longer human. It was a dual-toned, demonic rumble of the alpha wolf. Pushed to the very brink of a blood madness, Gideon's aristocratic composure crumbled. He staggered backward, his silver-tipped cane slipping on the polished marble floor. Alaric, listen to me. She is a half-blood. She was diluting the royal line. I did what had to be done to secure the Sterling legacy. You tortured my mate. Alaric growled, taking a slow, predatory step forward. His eyes had bled from silver to a pitch-black, bottomless void. You poisoned my queen. You threw my daughter onto the streets to freeze to death while you sat at my table and offered me condolences. Treason against the crown is paid in blood, but treason against the mate bond is paid in soul. The ancient Lycan law hung heavy in the room. Gideon raised his hand, desperately trying to summon the 4 elite guards waiting in the foyer. Guards, subdue the alpha. He has lost his mind to a rogue. Heavy footsteps pounded down the hallway. 4 massive Lycan warriors burst into the room, their claws extended, ready for a threat. But the moment they crossed the threshold, they froze. They didn't look at Gideon. They looked at Elena. Elena stood tall, no longer trembling. The fragile, broken woman from the alleyway was gone. In her place stood the Luna. Her hazel eyes burned with a brilliant, undeniable gold. The sheer, overwhelming power of a pure-blood Lycan queen, suppressed for 5 agonizing years, radiated from her in a suffocating wave. Stand down, Elena commanded, her voice ringing with absolute, ancestral authority. The 4 guards immediately dropped to their knees, bowing their heads in total submission to their resurrected queen. Jason stood by the doors, a terrifying smirk playing on his scarred lips. Gideon turned, his face ashen. Realizing he was entirely, utterly alone, he dropped his cane, falling to his knees as Alaric's alpha aura slammed into him like a physical freight train, crushing the breath from his lungs. Please. Gideon choked out, his arrogance replaced by pure, pathetic terror. Alaric, I am your blood. I am your family. You are nothing, Alaric stated coldly, standing over his uncle. He reached down, grabbing Gideon by the lapels of his expensive navy suit, and hoisted him into the air with one hand. With a sickening crack, Alaric snapped the silver signet ring, the mark of the elder, right off Gideon's thumb. "Jason," Alaric ordered, dropping the gasping traitor to the floor. "Strip him of his assets. Erase his name from the pack registry. Then throw him into the deepest, darkest silver cell beneath the estate. He will spend the rest of his miserable life in the exact same cold, agonizing darkness he forced upon my wife." "With pleasure, Alpha," Jason growled. He hauled Gideon up by the scruff of his neck, dragging the screaming, begging elder out of the conservatory and down into the bowels of the fortress. The heavy oak doors clicked shut, leaving a ringing silence in their wake. Alaric stood frozen for a long moment, the black slowly receding from his eyes, replaced by the familiar, heartbroken silver. He turned to face Elena. She was breathing heavily, the golden glow fading from her eyes as the adrenaline crash hit her battered body. She swayed on her feet. In a fraction of a second, Alaric crossed the room, catching her before she could fall. He didn't hold back this time. He wrapped his massive arms securely around her waist, pulling her flush against his chest, burying his face in the crook of her neck. Sparks brilliant, searing, and undeniable, ignited across every inch of their connecting skin. The broken, dormant mate bond snapped fully back into place, a roaring fire that chased away the cold of the last 5 years. "Elena," Alaric sobbed, the Lycan king breaking down completely in the arms of his mate. "My Elena, you're home. You're really home." Elena wrapped her arms around his broad shoulders, her fingers twisting into his dark hair. The smell of cedar, rain, and sheer, unwavering safety enveloped her. The phantom pain of the poison, the terror of the streets, and the haunting shadows of the basement finally dissolved. "I remember, Alaric." She wept against his chest. "I remember you. I remember us." A tiny, confused voice broke through their tears. "Mommy? Why is Mr. Alaric crying?" Alaric and Elena pulled back slightly, looking down. Lily was standing near the overturned tea set, clutching her stiff teddy bear, her silver eyes wide with concern. Elena wiped a tear from her cheek, a radiant, beautiful smile breaking across her face, the first real smile Alaric had seen in half a decade. She knelt down on the ruined Persian rug, holding her hand out to her daughter. "Lily, sweetie, come here," Elena said softly. Lily toddled over, throwing her arms around her mother's neck. Elena kissed the top of her blonde curls, then looked up at Alaric, who had dropped to his knees beside them. "Lily," Elena whispered, her voice choked with overwhelming love. "Do you remember how I told you that one day your daddy was going to find us? That he was looking for us everywhere?" Lily's eyes widened. She looked at the giant, terrifyingly powerful man who had bought her a toy in the freezing rain, the man who had let her put pink plastic tiaras in his hair, the man with the exact same silver eyes as her own. "You're my daddy?" Lily asked, her voice a breathless, tiny whisper. Alaric's chest heaved. He reached out, gently cupping his daughter's small, warm cheek. "Yes, little wolf, I'm your daddy, and I am never, ever letting you or your mommy go again." Lily dropped her teddy bear and launched herself into Alaric's chest. He caught her, wrapping his other arm tightly around Elena, pulling his family into an unbreakable embrace as the afternoon sun finally broke through the Seattle clouds, bathing the conservatory in warm, golden light. Scars fade, but the strength forged in the fire of betrayal lasts forever. Alaric and Elena reclaimed their stolen years, ruling their empire not with ruthless coldness, but with fiercely protective love. The Lycan king found his missing pieces in a dark Seattle alleyway, proving that no amount of poison or treachery can sever the sacred bond of true mates. Their reign of shadow was finally over,